Welcome to the Nursing Post podcast, all nursing all the time with Ashley Moore and Rosa Horsley. Today we will be talking about both service and emotional support animals. Our goal is always to inform and help start conversation.
We would like to start out this episode by saying that there is a big difference between an emotional support animal and a service dog. Now, they are both important and they both have great purpose in helping their owners, but there is differences, and we're just going to explore those differences and what your rights are in regards to those differences.
Yeah, I don't think people understand how important they are. So this was a topic that we had brought up in a previous podcast, and then we were like, maybe we should do a podcast about that.
And
so now we are. So here are some stats and facts. Emotional support animals, according to the AKC, are not service dogs. Mental health professionals prescribe emotional support animals under the law. These ESAs are allowed in any housing unit. That's an apartment, house, college dorm, etc. Even if the housing unit is labeled as no pet housing. ESAs come in different breeds and animal types and are not just limited to dogs. I know this does not sound rational to some people.
Right.
However, ESAs can be rabbits, cats, pigs, birds. They all qualify as ESAs.
Well, this does make sense to me because I'm allergic to dogs. So if you needed me to have a support animal,
yeah, you would have another alternative. Yeah, like a cat.
Right.
Or what have you, whatever you're not allergic to in this case. ESAs can help with emotional and psychological conditions such as stress, depression, anxiety, panic attacks, post-traumatic stress disorder, and more.
Now, service animals are a little bit different. These service dogs help an estimated 80 million Americans. About 500,000 service dogs are currently helping people in the United States. 2% of blind or visually impaired people work with guide dogs. Approximately 5,000 hearing dogs are currently being used. 18 months is the average training for a service dog, and they cost anywhere between $10,000 to $20,000, and the average wait time for a well-trained service dog is 3 years. Now, you will hear me say service dogs because,
well, legally, they are the only animal that is qualified to be a service animal.
Right.
So we're going to talk a little bit about ESAs. Emotional support animals are neither household pets nor highly trained service animals. ESAs offer companionship. They don't have to be dogs. These are animals that can help with loneliness, depression, anxiety, and even phobias. ESAs are not trained to help disabled persons with specific tasks. They help their owners cope with the challenges associated with emotional and mental health conditions by providing comfort just with their presence alone.
Service animals, like I was saying, are always dogs. These dogs are trained to individually work or carry out a task for the individual with a disability, whether that's physical, sensory, psychiatric, intellectual, or another mental handicap. Most common types of service dogs include guide dogs, hearing, medical alert, mobility, autism, psychiatric service, mainly veterans with PTSD. They can help by using walk guidance, hearing impairments, seizure alerts, diabetic alerts, and allergy detection.
So there are therapeutic benefits of emotional support animals. ESAs provide their owners with companionship, like we said, preventing with feelings of loneliness and isolation. They also help with reducing stress levels. Spending time with your ESA releases endorphins, and that provides a calming effect. And ESAs help with reducing anxiety. Animals provide a sense of security and familiarity. In the U-Toledo pilot study, it was a study followed by a small group of study participants who were paired with a shelter dog or a cat. All participants in the study met low-income criteria and were identified as a risk of social isolation, and they were referred there by their mental health providers. Researchers were testing for changes in a trio of biomarkers related to stress and bonding. They surveyed and regularly tested for changes in depression, anxiety, and loneliness prior to adoption and at the end of the 12-month study period. This is what they found. They found statistically significant decrease in participants' depression, anxiety, and loneliness as measured by standardized scales. They observed a consistent pattern of higher amounts of bonding hormone oxytocin and lower amounts of stress hormone cortisol after participants engaged in focused interactions with their ESA animals for a 10-minute period. Researchers observed the highest oxytocin increase at the 12-month mark, which would indicate participants' bond with their dog or their cat had strengthened over time. Unfortunately, a few have abused the significance of emotional support animals, causing changes in the acceptance and privileges once given to ESAs and their owners. Over the last couple of years, if you guys have seen some of the news stories, ESAs are no longer able to fly on planes anymore and accompany their owners because people were abusing it. Pigs. They were trying to get pigs on planes and call them, ESAs. And I'm not saying that they're not, but I think there's, some places and times in which things are appropriate and not appropriate. And instead of wanting, their ESA pig perhaps down in the cargo area with the other animals, they were wanting their pigs in their laps during the flight, which you can imagine was not very comfortable. So because of people abusing the system, unfortunately, ESAs no longer have the same rights as they once did.
Now, service animals or service dogs are individually trained to work and perform tasks for the individual with the disability. So you don't give a dog that's trained for the hearing impaired to somebody who's blind.
Absolutely.
They're trained for a specific task. The owners can bring their service dogs into all areas of public facilities, private businesses. They have to have a harness or a leash or a tether. Unless the handler is unable to use that for a disability, which obviously, if they can't use it, then it won't have one on there. They may be asked if there's a reason why it doesn't have a harness. So there's questions you can ask and questions you can't ask.
Absolutely.
If the animal is not housebroken or is out of control or the owner can't control it, then that's a problem as well. That would be a cause of the dog having to be removed from whatever facility.
Absolutely.
But beyond that, pretty much service dogs go where you go.
All the time.
Yes. Service dogs can also remind a person to take their medicines. They can calm a person with PTSD during a panic attack. Veterans with substantial mobility limitations and or health disorders may be eligible for veterinary health benefits through the U.S. Department of Veteran Affairs Mental Health Mobility Service Dog Initiative. And that is a long program to say.
Yes, it is. However, it is important because I feel like our vets don't have enough resources. And so every time I find something, I try to advertise for it so that they will know where to go.
Again, that's the U.S. Department of Veteran Affairs Mental Health Mobility Service Dog Initiative. Veterans can apply by meeting with a VA mental health provider to begin the application process for this benefit. It is important that you know your rights.
So for both ESAs and service dogs, the Fair Housing Act, known as FHA, is a federal law that prevents discrimination against tenants in their homes. The emotional and or physical benefits from the animal living in the home are what qualify the animal as an assistance animal. A letter from a medical doctor or therapist is all that is needed to classify the animal as an assistance animal. Landlords must agree to a reasonable accommodation request if the disability claim is true, and if the request does not create a hardship on the landlord or the other tenants. Service and assistance animals are not technically pets, and owners do not have to pay a pet fee. I feel like that's super important. But then I also feel like everybody always knowing their rights is super important.
Well, that's a big difference because how many people don't get the help that they need because they think that, oh, I can't pay the deposit for having a emotional support animal.
Mm-hmm.
Because a lot of people do make you put down a deposit.
Oh, absolutely. For animals. Absolutely.
Of course, that's tenants. If you own your own home, you can do whatever you want. But if you're renting somewhere, then that's a big deal.
Mm-hmm.
Or some places don't allow pets or don't. But this is really not a pet.
No, this is like I hate to say it, but these ESAs, they're like a prescription. They're medical.
Yes.
Yes, it doesn't come in the form of a pill.
It's like an alternative therapy.
Yes. And, by law, your landlord has to, give you the right to have your ESA.
Now, the service dogs fall under a different category. They are part of the American with Disabilities Act, or the ADA. Allergies and fear of dogs are not valid reasons for denying access or refusing service to people using service animals. Establishments that sell or prepare food must generally allow service animals in public areas, even if state or local health codes prohibit animals on the premises. People with disabilities who use service animals cannot be isolated from other people or treated less favorably just because they have a service dog, and they cannot be charged any kind of fee because they have a service dog. Not all disabilities are visible, and because of that, when it's not obvious what service an animal provides, only limited questions are allowed. You can pretty much ask 2 questions. Is the dog a service animal required because of a disability? What work or task has the dog been trained to perform?
And that's it. You can't ask the owner of that animal anything else.
No.
The biggest reason for doing this podcast is so that people know their rights. And, service animals, or dogs in this particular case, they are relatively expensive, and there is a long wait list for them.
Yes.
So it's definitely important that if you don't have like a physical capability or a physical disability, that you speak with your doctor, because maybe a service dog isn't necessarily the answer for you, but maybe an emotional support animal is. So know your rights and know who to go to ask for help.
These dogs are expensive, service dogs.
Mm-hmm.
It's because it takes them about 18 months to be trained with a specialized trainer, and not all dogs that go into training
graduate,
and that takes time. So if maybe you have a child who's diabetic and you want them to have a service dog to help with monitoring glucose, which is something that they do.
Yep.
If you're thinking that you may want that when your child goes to school, then you need to apply while they're, either at home or before school starts and years in advance, because it takes that long. So you want to be thinking ahead as much as you can if it's something that piques your interest.
Absolutely.
Because if you apply and at least get on the list to try to get one of these service animals.
Well, it's a process because you and your child actually have to spend time with said service dog. It's not just you picking the right dog, it's the right dog picking you.
Right. You don't just go by, pick up a dog, go home, and you're done. It's not how it works. So it is a process. So you'll want to start that process as soon as you realize that this is something that you want to do.
You can find our references on our website, thenursingpostpodcast.com, and subscribe to our podcast on your favorite platform. Be sure to leave your thoughts and comments. They're always welcome. And thanks again for listening to The Nursing Post.